A working man's revolver. A working man's wheel gun. A blue-collar six-shooter. I think you get the idea. Today I'm going to be doing a review gun a patron sent me months and months ago. And I think the best way to describe it is one of those terms. A working man's revolver. With that, welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, even revolvers. The right way with Almighty God at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host, military, law enforcement, private security contracting, competition shooting, background, bullet points in the show notes. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Okay, this story should start with a man named Pat, or Starfish, as his friends lovingly call him. He sent me a revolver. He's one of the patrons. He sent me a revolver, not to keep, but to use, to test out. He is a Taurus, fan, super fan. He loves Taurus. Pat and Taurus sitting in a tree. He loves Taurus. I, less so. I have been in the shooting world a long time, and in years of yore, they didn't have the best quality control. Let me just put politely, they had some issues, all right? I had heard from several people, not just Pat, by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is established, that Taurus had really stepped up their quality control game. Still a bit skeptical. Pat sent me this revolver. Now, this is a Taurus Model 65. A Model 65. Now, unless you really are a Taurus aficionado, you might be thinking, what does that mean? Well, it's quintessential a revolver as you can get as far as design goes. If you asked a cartoonist or somebody like that, draw me a revolver, likely they would draw you something very similar to this. It is a black, I don't mean blue steel, I mean this one's black, 4-inch-ish barrel, maybe 3.9 and maybe 4.25, but 4-ish inch barrel, medium frame, 357 Magnum, 6-shot revolver. Again, about as plain Jane vanilla a revolver as you can get. Doesn't mean bad. It's a very capable, very good revolver. The reason you think about a gun like this when you think about revolver, no caveat. It's not like big bore, not like hunting grizzly bear in a loincloth or whatever you might be thinking. You say revolver, this comes to mind. This is very similar to the revolvers, although many of them were just 38 specials, that law enforcement in this country carried for the better part of the 20th century. A 6-shot, 38 special 357 caliber revolver. They almost certainly were not carrying a Taurus. They were carrying a gun very similar to this. Why? Because I think even Taurus would admit that this is a copy of a Smith & Wesson. Very similar to a Smith & Wesson K-frame or L-frame. So this is like a very good do-it-all revolver. Now, you get a little bit more velocity with a 6-inch barrel gun. So they're much harder to carry. At least the way I think most people should carry. Strong side hip, barrel down. And they are not as concealable as a 3-inch or a 2-inch. But 4-inch is kind of that sweet spot for duty carry, for all-around use. It's a good, capable design. And 357 Magnum, obviously you can also shoot 38 Special. It's a very versatile gun. You know, as far as handgun rounds go, and I'm not saying you should go this route, 357/38 Special is the most versatile, period. I'm not saying the best. I'm not saying it's better than 9mm for the standard for self-defense. I'm saying the most versatile. Meaning I can load up 180 grain hard cast, buffalo bore, screaming, borderline masochistic loads. Or I can load powder puff 90 grain 38 special that just barely trickles out of the barrel. And both will work in this gun, and many, many things in between. Your classic 125 grain 357 Magnum. One of your classic, 158 grain 38 special. 135 grain beer gold dot plus P. Been a classic standard go-to. In fact, the first handgun I ever bought with my own money. When I went to work for L.A.P.D. after the Marine Corps, which obviously we had issued guns, they did not issue a backup gun. It was highly encouraged that you get one. Well, the first gun I bought was that backup gun. I still have it. Praise God. It's a 38 Special snub nose. The load we carried in that, the load I still like to carry is 135 grain plus P. In that case, a short barrel load. But that's been a standard law enforcement load, defense load, protection load for a long time. Those are just some of the loads. And if you hand load, you can get crazy with the versatility. You can load birdshot. You can do all kinds of stuff with a 357 Magnum 38 Special. And again, the 4-inch medium frame is kind of a sweet spot. It's not crazy heavy. It's a good all around. Now, as far as this copy of a Smith & Wesson, again, one of the main reasons it was sent to me is that apparently Taurus had stepped up its game. And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with this Taurus. And I've had it for months and I've shot it. I haven't carried it because I have better guns to carry. And if you don't, or you just want to carry a 6-shot 4-inch revolver because for you think it's best, don't let me pee in your Cheerios. But I think in 2025 there are better options. But it's a great option for an all-around do-it-all handgun. And this Taurus has not let me down. Check again, clear. It is a great gun. Let's just go first off based off appearance. And again, this is the Model 65. You take what applies to whatever model you're looking at. Remember how I said it was black? It is not blued steel. I assume it's Parkerized. I haven't had it chemically tested, right? But I know my way around gun finishes. It looks Parkerized. It's probably Parkerized. It's a matte, pretty robust black finish, not blued. It's not a fine blued revolver. But, that served militaries for quite a while in some pretty harsh conditions. It's a fine finish. It's not reflective, which is good if you're going to carry it for defense or for hunting or whatever. It's a good finish. It's pretty robust. It's held up pretty well. One of the ways you can tell the decent resistance of a finish is drag marks on the cylinder. And it looks like a pretty good finish. Inside the bore, same thing, a pretty good finish. As far as fit and finish goes, it's not going to win any beauty contests. There are some gaps. It's not the most finely polished. It's not a 1950s, 1960s blued steel Colt Python. It's not. It's not meant to be that. There are some gaps. There are some cosmetic only fitment issues. It does not fit together the way that let's say a plate fits into a Smith & Wesson. It's not that. But as far as shootability, durability goes, it's fantastic. The double action pull is serviceable. It's a service grade double action revolver trigger, meaning very long, very heavy. It is what it is. The single action trigger is heavy for a single action trigger, quite heavy, but very good. What you would expect from a single action trigger. Crisp, clean, breaks like a heavy glass rod. Heavy, but very good. A blue collar kind of wheel gun. The one big thing I don't like about these grips, the ones that come on this Taurus, they're black, which the whole gun is black. I'm not a big fan of black. You guys probably know that. But for this gun, it's fine. But the grips are giant rubber finger groove grips. Blech. Gross. Finger grooves are a bad idea. They're always a bad idea. They always were a bad idea. Finger grooves are horrible. This has finger grooves. That said, since it's a copy of a Smith & Wesson, I assume there are a bunch of different aftermarket grips you can get for it that don't have finger grooves and that are not obese. I like a small, thin, kind of splinter grip on my revolvers. That's just me. I don't like these giant, fat, obese finger groove grips. That said, it is what it is. That's one of the cool things about revolvers. You can switch out the grips. This model's a little bit older. I don't know if they still have the same grips on there. With that said, let me look up on Taurus. I assume they still make this model, and then we'll look up some specs on it. They do still make it, and it does still have those abomination grips on it. But other than that, it's a decent revolver. So it's this same model still being made. And the MSRP on it is $695. You likely could find it cheaper. That's MSRP. Frame size medium, overall length 10.5 inches, width 1.5 inches, barrel length 4 inches exactly, overall height 5.5 inches, overall weight 38 ounces, twist rate 1 in 16.5. Okay, that a couple of things I want to hit on there. That 38 ounces, that is not a light gun. That weighs about as much as a full-sized GI 5-inch 1911. Which, if memory serves correct, weighs 41 ounces. That's pretty close. To give you an idea, I mentioned my carry gun. My carry gun is one of my go-to carry guns is a SIG 226 single action only. Capacity of, 15, 17, 20 round mags, depending on what you want to put in it. It weighs 30-something ounces. Now let me talk about the sights on here. They're fixed sights. And you may find that as an asset. There certainly are advantages and disadvantages, much like everything in the firearms world. That is also a trade-off. Once they're set, unless you bend the barrel in the frame, of which I have done on revolvers, but unless you do that, they're pretty much going to stay sighted in as long as they are sighted in. So they're very, very rugged and robust. If you want to set it and forget it, you're not going to do a bunch of stuff to it. Those fixed sights... And they're pretty crude, right? They're a fixed, very shallow rear notch sight and a front ramp sight. And when I got this, Pat, I assume, had painted it with yellow paint, which is great because I probably would have done the same. So to make it slightly visible, but as it comes from factory, it's black on black. Very poor for defensive sights. You're going to want some kind of color on that front sight, but that's easily remedied. But the other thing is, I shot a variety of loads through this. I think only one load shot point of aim, point of impact. There is a wild variation in revolver rounds, I've noticed, in many different calibers, but in revolvers especially. There's a huge variation in point of aim, point of impact, meaning, I can aim let's say I'm doing a headshot, and I can be dead on at 25 yards with a certain load. And then I switch to another load, and I could be completely off the target with another load with fixed sights on a revolver. So I have to find the load that gun really likes. This gun happened to like a certain 125 grain load. It shot it pretty well, point of aim, point of impact. Virtually nothing else I shot through it shot where I was aiming. That's not unique to this revolver. That's kind of what you get with fixed iron sights, but they are more rugged. So if you were a cop or an agency, you knew you were going to run 135 grain plus P, spear gold dot all the time, then you would just have your sights regulated for that, and there you go. Going back to that versatility, though, if you want to take advantage of some of that versatility, yeah, you can put all those loads to this gun, and they'll go off. They'll make a noise, but you're probably not going to hit what you're aiming at. That really decreases the versatility. So your option with this is to find the load that it likes and stick with it. And if you want to do that, if you're like, I'm going to try a bunch of different loads, and when I find load X, Y, or Z that it likes, that's just what I'm going to shoot through it and done. That's a great solution, assuming that's a good load for what you're trying to do. If it only likes 147 grain 38 special wad cutters, 148 grain full wad cutters, that's a load that it likes, and that's not what you want to use, that kind of stinks. So just keep that in mind. There are advantages and disadvantages. This is a no-frills, fixed sight gun. Now, again, in shooting this gun and using this gun, I'm familiar with Smith & Wesson. It's basically a copy of a Smith & Wesson. It's a good design. It's a good gun, minus the grips they put on it. If you're going to run the load that it shoots point of aim, point of impact, it's not bad. And it's what you would expect from a medium frame revolver. It's definitely shootable in 357 Magnum. And it's, dare I say, even pleasant to shoot in 38 Special. So it's good for that. It has proven reliable and rugged. And this is a sample size of 1, but This is a good revolver, and I would not hesitate to recommend a Taurus revolver, is the long caveat that it's new and made with the current quality control of Taurus. You know, I mentioned the cosmetic things on there, which is fine. Again, this is not going to win any beauty contests, but it's a good working man's revolver. And cylinder gap is acceptable. It's nothing to write home about. It's also, not something you send it back to the factory for. The cylinder gap is totally acceptable. And the play in the cylinder, again, nothing to write home about. It's not crazy tight lockup, but it's not horrible. It's not bad. It's a good, serviceable revolver. If you want, I guess this is the rub here, if you want a medium size, this particular model, or extrapolate what you want for other models, but if you want a good revolver for using, for shooting, for carry in that class, let's say a 4-inch medium frame revolver, and you want to save some money, the Taurus is a good option. It's not the only option. You could find a used police trade-in Smith & Wesson or something like it, or you could save even more money and find one of these used. But it's a good option. I would not hesitate, again, to recommend it. Oh, I will mention it does have one of those locks on the back of the hammer. A lot of people, emote all over comment sections of forums because of that. I don't really care. I have Smith & Wessons with the lock. I've never had an issue with the lock. If you have an issue or you think it's going to be an issue, put some red Loctite on it and just leave it. But that's not a no-go for me, but it does have that lock. Smith & Wessons have them on the frame. This one has it on the hammer. I think that was one of the holdovers from the 90s when everybody was getting crazy about safety and assault weapons bans and even putting safeties on revolvers, which is a bit superfluous in my opinion. But it does have that. But all in all, a good revolver at a good price. And if it's any indication of the quality of Taurus, it's a decent option. I would not hesitate recommending one of these for what this weapon is and what it was designed for. Anyway, I guess that's kind of a review of Taurus, of this model, of 4-inch revolvers in general. I hope it was useful to you, and I'm very thankful to Pat, who provided the firearm. All right, tactical tip of the day, nothing to do with revolvers, nothing to do with handguns. Dirty water. If you're any kind of survivalist prepper, don't spend it all on guns and ammo and then die of dysentery. That's not super cool, no matter how awesome your multicam pattern is. Clean water is a big deal. A lot of different ways to purify water, but one way to quickly purify a lot of water is chlorine. The right ratio, so you don't kill yourself with that, but chlorine is a good way. There are giant chlorine pucks that will purify a ton of water. Probably not literally a ton, but... And there's also chlorine granulates, and there's chlorine tabs. Chlorine tabs that are specifically made for purifying water, and there's other ones that you can get bigger in bulk that are the same. I'm not telling you what to do. Don't, if you make yourself sick or somebody else sick, it's your fault, not mine. But chlorine is chlorine. Use the right ratio. It will clean water. It will kill stuff that might potentially kill you. Yeah, use that information how you wish. That is your tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day. He who is the blessed and only potentate, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. My thoughts. King of Kings. Whatever earthly authority, kings, powers, princes, politicians, that's nothing compared to the power and authority of God, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Best remember who our ultimate king and authority is. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.